we were going about how does sugar affect the body. So I talked about the dietary guidelines, how much most people are eating, what we're really supposed to eat, right? Again, 24 grams a day, 6 teaspoons, and that's for adults. So even less for children. And I actually don't have this in my notes, but while I'm here at it, so while I'm talking about these amounts that some doctors believe are should be recommended, which is even lower than the government's dietary recommendations. 24 grams of sugar, there's about that amount in 1 cup of orange juice, okay? So juices have very, very high sugar content. So if you do drink them, you should just drink a little tiny bit, like 2 ounces, 4 ounces, very, very small amounts. They're very, very, very high in sugar. And how many times have all of us, I've done it myself too, given a small kid a cup of orange juice thinking we're doing something great, not realizing that we're giving them more than the daily amount of recommended sugars for an adult in 1 cup of orange juice. Okay, so then we talked about metabolism. Okay, so the problem isn't just the amount of sugar, but it's also the amount of highly processed sweeteners, right? Like I just said, there's a big difference if you're eating molasses, if you're eating honey, if you're eating real maple syrup. One is those sugars generally aren't refined. If you're eating like sugar cane, like gnawing on the sugar cane, they're not refined. So when they enter the body, they then have to be kind of like broken down and worked out to get to the sugar. So that's number one, is more, they're not absorbed as quickly. The other difference with good sugars is that they often come with nutrients, right? So like cane sugar cane is filled with B vitamins. You can same as molasses. Maple syrup, I don't know exactly what nutrients, but maple syrup does have nutrients in it. And the same with honey. Honey has a lot of good yeast and good microbes, and it has a lot of antioxidants, and it has a lot of awesome substrates and co-substrates that scientists haven't even identified. So that's one of the differences between sugars that are better for you and sugars that are refined. Okay, so all of these refined sugars too, right? Like your high fructose corn syrup, all of the other ones on the list. What do? Is they spike your blood sugar even faster, right, than the honey or the cane sugar. I guess we just talked about that. Okay. And they are implicated in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So one of my best friends, she had, I think she had like kidney surgery. And this is when we were in our mid-20s. I feel like we were 26 or something like that. And after her surgery, the surgeon had told her, "You have one of the fattiest livers I've ever seen." So here the poor dear, like she couldn't even drink like a glass of alcohol. So like I lived with her. She literally would have a glass of alcohol, like, I don't know, a few times a year. So it wasn't from alcohol. It was from all of the high fructose corn syrup and all of the refined sugars that were in her food. Because again, we were in college in the 90s, so this was in the 2000s. We grew up during the fat-free craze where there was just a ton of sugar in our foods. Okay, so what else does sugar do? One is it messes with these 2 hormones. And again, this is more specifically the highly processed sugars. You have 2 hormones. One's called ghrelin and one's called leptin. And there's other things that mess with this hormone too, but high fructose corn syrup does especially. So what ghrelin does is it tells you when you're hungry, right? It's a hormone that's responsible for making the stomach growl, and when you get pains in your stomach, right? And when your brain says, "Eat, feed me," right? That's the ghrelin hormone. Leptin hormone is the hormone that is released actually from fat cells when you're full, right? Tells you to stop eating, says, "Oh my gosh, I'm full, stop eating, please stop putting stuff down the pipe." But what happens when you eat high fructose corn syrup and these other refined sugars is those two hormones get out of whack. So what happens is the ghrelin, let's see, is it the ghrelin? I have it. Oh, the ghrelin is not suppressed, right? So you're going to continue to feel really hungry. And that's also because if you're getting a lot of sugar, you're also not getting nutrients, right? So the body is still like, come on, get more. Like, I need some other stuff, right? Not just all the sugar. So you continue to feel really hungry. And because you continue to feel really hungry, your leptin hormone is never going to be stimulated and you're not going to feel full. So that makes you more susceptible to overeating. These refined sugars also cause metabolic syndrome. So some of you might be familiar with metabolic syndrome, which is linked to diabetes and cancer and heart disease. Basically, it's a problem with the way your cells metabolize. And it is implicated with weight gain, right? It's implicated with a big distended belly. It's implicated with low HDL, with high LDL, elevated blood sugar, right? Elevated triglycerides and elevated high blood sugar. So for a lot of years, we were taught that this was, but now that they're finding it actually isn't the fat, it's actually sugar that's causing this. They love to consume fructose, right? So a lot of the refined sugars are in the form of fructose. And when cancer cells eat fructose, they can replicate and divide, right? So they can divide, they can replicate themselves, and then they can do this even faster. So they can grow faster than they could at rates when people weren't eating these refined sugars. And some other diseases that are linked to high fructose corn syrup include Alzheimer's and high blood pressure and heart disease and polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay, and then lastly, the way that sugar has a negative implication on your health. Well, one is it depletes your immune system, right? It makes your immune system your immunity is not as robust when you eat sugar as opposed to when you don't eat sugar. But what it also does, and this is how you get the sugar cravings, is you have something called the gut microbiome, which many of you have probably heard me talk about a lot before. Some of you, this might be new too, because you haven't heard me blab as much. But our gut microbiome is something that lives mostly in your colon, but essentially it starts from your mouth and it goes all the way to where your feces is excreted out your external anal sphincter. And what the gut microbiome is it's a bunch of, they're thinking thousands, scientists are thinking in the thousands of different microbe colonies. So it's bacteria and it's yeast and it's viruses and it's fungi. And a good gut microbiome is going to have different colonies, different strains of all of those different microbes, and they're going to work together. They're going to be in very specific sizes, and they work together to keep the human host healthy. So some of the things that scientists have discovered that the gut microbiome does is it programs immune cells. One of the other things, it tells us certain immune cells in our body what to go around and kill. It helps pre-digest food, right? So that it puts less work on the intestinal cells. And then that way there's also more nutrients that are bioavailable, more nutrients that are going to be available for your intestinal cells to absorb really, really quickly and easily without having to do all of the work. They also live together in colonies, and they kind of, for lack of a better word, they're kind of like a mucus on the outside of your intestinal cells. And that protects your intestinal cells. They also work together to keep harmful strains of microbes out of the body so that you don't get ill, right? Common colds, things like that. Your microbes, if you have enough in the right amounts and the right strains of beneficial microbes, your microbes will actually work really hard so that harmful microbes cannot cause common illnesses like viruses or stomach bugs or things like that. So what happens is when you eat too much sugar is you have microbes. There are certain microbes that eat sugar, just like, never mind with the just like. So there's certain microbes that eat sugar. For example, candida yeast, right? So candida in a healthy gut microbiome is part of it in very small amounts. But candida is one of the yeasts that eats sugar. It loves sugar. So when we eat too much sugar, what happens is the candida strain, as well as other strains of microbes, proliferate. They become too big, right? They take over and they push out other strains that are needed and are supposed to be there for the human host to be healthy and for the gut microbiome to work together and work in harmony, and keep the human host healthy. So, for example, if you're feeding some gut microbes too much sugar, they grow too big. So another example of what scientists have found that your gut microbes do is, one is they regulate estrogen too, which isn't what I was going to say, but they actually send signals right to your brain. So I think that you've probably all felt this, right? Like anxiety starts in the gut, right? It's very specific. It starts here and then it comes here. So feelings of anxiety and depression and even cravings, right? So certain microbes eat certain things. If we're eating too much of, say, sugar, for an example, our sugar-loving microbes are going to grow in colonies too big, and they're going to send messages up to your brain that go, feed me, right? And that's where your sugar cravings come from. It's actually not originating here. It's originating here. But that's all I'm going to talk about the gut microbiome for today, because the class in June is actually going to be all about the gut microbiome and how you can get it back if it is in dysbiosis and you have strains of microbes in sizes that are too big or too little and it's not working properly for you. You get common illnesses very quickly and easily, things like that. If you have problems with digestion, we're going to talk about that in the June class of how you can repopulate your gut microbiome without taking supplements, what food you can use to do that with. But that's all I'm going to talk about it today. Oh, except for one other thing. So when we talk about artificial sweeteners, right? Well, do they have like the glucose and the fructose? No. But what they do is they alter your gut bacteria. So you're also going to have some bacteria that would be like, this saccharin here, man, I can munch on that and look, I can grow, I can replicate. Ooh, our colony is really big now, right? And that colony maybe was supposed to be really small. And so now you've got dysbiosis in the gut microbiome. So that's one of the biggest problems of artificial sweeteners, is that they alter your gut bacteria. Okay, so now is the time to look for questions and comments. And Andre says hi. But I think I already said hi. So no, well, not that I can't say hi twice. We have no questions and comments. That's wonderful. But if you do have questions, just write them in at any point, and I have spaces in the class to stop and talk about, or I should say stop and look for questions and answer them. So if you missed that part in the beginning. Okay. So we got to just take a sip here.